Yeah, so interestingly enough, my background is in agriculture. So I did not start in the kind of workforce development realm. And so that's where my experience started with worker voice. And I was lucky enough to come into workforce development, economic development, specifically in the ag industry. We have very strong ag industry in Kentucky, and especially leading up to the Kentucky Derby here in the next month. You guys know that our equine industry is very broad and very strong in the state of Kentucky. And that's really where this kind of all started. So I was working with a group of employers that were specific to thoroughbred farms. So those horses you see in the Derby are thoroughbreds. And so these facilities ranged from, having 5 staff members, family owned businesses, all the way up to multinational, have facilities all over the world. They have thousands of employees, et cetera. And we were really looking at their struggle to not necessarily hire, but more retain individuals in these particular entry level positions. And that group of employers, we had them in a collaborative, so they were working together across the industry, across the states. We had about 40 of them involved, and we dug into a lot of different things. And one of the things that they as employers really kind of unearthed at some point is, we promote within when we can, and they felt like they did a really good job of finding people who were good at their skill and their craft, and bringing them up into middle management, et cetera. And what they were really hearing from individuals who were kind of backfilling those entry level positions was that their management teams were not great. They weren't very fantastic. They weren't really great leaders. They were very good at what they did in terms of working with the animals and on the farms and things like that, but they really did not have good leadership training, and that the employers knew that was on them. They were promoting them on various skills, but not really giving them the tools to be successful in leadership. And so they really started looking at, what can we do to build that leadership training for our staff members? So that's kind of where it started. So we reached out to a couple of organizations to say, hey, we're really looking at either finding something that's already in existence or building a leadership program specifically for the agriculture industry. And what we really got back from that was, well, where do you want to start? There's so much that you can teach, regarding leadership, and where do you want to start? And our employers were really like, we don't know. And so they did their due diligence and reached out to their staff in 3 specific positions on their farms. And they asked those questions. There was a paper survey, both delivered in Spanish and English. We got some really great feedback. They had a better understanding of where they needed to start focusing to develop that leadership training. But what they also found out is, and this is amazing, and how do we continue talking to our employees? Because they got more out of it than they thought they would in terms of information. And so they were hesitant to do quarterly surveys and things like that because of the ability to continue to extract that information. So they thought, well, why don't we bring a group of employees together similar to how we're doing it as employers, and have continuous feedback loops. And so what they did is the employers designed this really neat way of bringing employees together. So they nominated multiple people from each of their facilities to kind of represent not their facility or the employer themselves, but their position. So we had a cohort of probably about 25 employees that came from about 30 different facilities, and they represented 3 different positions. And it's a large, but it's a small industry. So people did know like where the other individuals came from and what positions they were in. But it was really that we started it as a kind of a cone of silence. We're working together as employees to really have a safe space to discuss job quality and what we can do. And inadvertently, I was also working still with the employers. So I was kind of that intermediary, was getting information from the employers, was getting it from the employees, and was able to be that intermediary that connected the dots. So we would talk about a lot of things with the employers, and they would voice concerns about various things. And then I would take it back to the employee group, get feedback from them, information, et cetera, take it back to the employers, vice versa. And so was really able to have clear communication from both groups, and that safe space for both of them to be able to talk. with the knowledge that we did a lot of employer education as well, saying that if you're going to embark on this, you need to make sure that you're going to make a change. You can't listen to your employees and understand kind of their suggestions and their grievances and then nothing happen. And so they really took that to heart, and we worked with kind of the coalition of the willing in terms of those employers, and then saw that a lot of other employers joined forces afterwards because it was working for those employers who had started. And it was kind of, they didn't want to be left out. So they kind of joined the cohort. And so that was really interesting to see. And it spanned everything from what we talked about today, struggles with transportation, leadership qualities with direct supervisors. It looked at flexibility within time schedules. You guys know agriculture never stops. So they were looking at, it doesn't, when I have to be at work at 6:30 in the morning, it doesn't match up with my child's school schedule, and how can we remedy that? And so it was looking at all of these very set traditional ways within agriculture, and how can we think outside the box to make it a better place for your employees, which then makes it a better business overall. So that was a fantastic way. And going back to our onion, we didn't start there. They didn't start with looking at job quality and worker voice, but it came to that when they really realized that they can throw a lot of spaghetti at a wall, but some of it's going to stick and some of it's not. So you might as well go to the source of it to understand where do you need to start. And there's multiple other kind of examples for that, but it was really amazing for those employees to have that voice and to see it come to fruition with their employers.